Good morning, students. Continuing with yesterday's class on feminism. Obviously, we were discussing what is feminism and history of feminism. So, as we had discussed yesterday, history of feminism comprises the narratives of the movements and ideologies which have aimed at equal rights for women. While feminists around the world have differed in causes, goals, and intentions depending on time, culture, and country. So, most Western feminist historians assert that all movements that work to obtain women's right should be considered feminist movement. So, even when they did not apply the mainstream term to themselves, some other historians limit the term feminist to the modernist feminist movement. So, we level proto-feminist to describe earlier movements. And further, there was a discussion regarding mainstream and alternative feminism. So, what exactly it is, and when did the term alternative feminism started? We'll discuss this in today's class. So, if you talk about mainstream feminism and alternative feminism, so as a general term, mainstream feminism identifies feminist ideologies and movement which do not fall into either the socialist or radical feminist camps. So, the mainstream feminist movement traditionally focused on political and legal reforms and has its root in first wave feminism and in the historical liberal feminism of the 19th and the 20th century. We had discussed this yesterday also. I'm repeating it here again because obviously I have to distinguish these two terms, mainstream and the alternative feminism. So the term is today often used by essayists and cultural analysts in reference to a movement made palatable to a general audience by celebrity supporters like Taylor Swift. Mainstream feminism is often derisively referred to as white feminism. So a term implying that mainstream feminists don't fight for intersectionality with race, class, and sexuality. So that was, in a way, we can say that was allegation on mainstream feminism. So next, mainstream feminism has also been accused of being commercialized and of focusing exclusively on issues that are less contentious in Western world today, such as women's political participation or female education access. Radical feminists sometimes criticize mainstream feminists as part of a system of patriarchy. So the center of the theory or center of this is like the system of patriarchy. So nevertheless, major milestone of the feminist struggle, such as the right to vote and the right to education, came about mainly as a result of the work of the mainstream feminist movement, which emphasized building far-reaching support for feminist cause among both men and women. So finally, mainstream feminists thought from an essentialist notion of womanhood based on the normative model of middle class white women's experiences. So the center or the canon of it was the middle class white women's experience to a recognition that women are in fact quite diverse and see themselves differently. So it begins with questions of social construction of gender and the mainstream feminist assumption that women means middle class women. So this was something which was criticized later, and obviously it is regarded as a typical mainstream feminism. So further, after this speech, which I had mentioned yesterday also about this Sojourner Truth's speech, which she had delivered in 1851, anti-women. So the movement, a different sort of movement started, which was later recognized as alternative feminism. So according to this speech was to American feminist women of other races who proposed alternative feminism. So this trend accelerated in 1960s with the civil rights movement in United States and the collapse of European colonialism in Africa, the Caribbean parts of Latin America and Southeast Asia, because obviously Europe and America was losing its hold over the African countries, the Caribbean countries. So the challenge to mainstream assumption is then posed by women of color, poor, women, immigrants, lesbians, and women in the third world. So it discussed the various forms of inclusion of black women within mainstream feminist frameworks. So the construction of whiteness, the privilege that race afford white women, and feminist strategies to overcome racism within mainstream feminism. Later, the struggle of Latin and Asian American women, the specific questions of identity they confront, and how this relate to mainstream feminism. So further, it discusses the challenges. I'm talking about alternative feminism. So further, it discusses the challenges posed to U.S. mainstream feminism by third world feminists, and the struggle of Latina and Asian American women, the specific question of identity they confront, and how this relate to mainstream feminism. So this discusses the challenges posed on U.S. mainstream feminism by the third world feminism. So if you want to read it further, then you'll find the details of this mainstream and alternative feminism in the link given below. So you can just click on this link and go to that site and find out the details related to this discussion. Further, we move on to the waves, the different waves of feminism. So when we talk about feminism, we discussed it in yesterday's class also that it is divided into three waves, and some of you had come up with the conclusion that obviously there is a fourth wave also, which we will discuss later obviously, but there is still an argument whether we have moved on to the fourth wave or still it is like a continuation of the third wave. So before we move on to that argument, obviously we'll have to first discuss or see what is first wave feminism. So feminism is often categorized as wave time periods aimed at elevating women's status in society and giving them equal rights. So this metaphor describes the surge of activity at the beginning of a phase, which then reaches its peak usually in the form of concrete accomplishment and consequence of struggle. So the wave then falls as a lapse till another wave forms. This classification helps us differentiate between movement with varied purposes and characteristics and create a broad timeline of the progression of the feminism. So if you talk about first wave feminism, then first wave feminism refers to an extended period of feminist activity during the 19th century and early 20th century excuse me, in the United Kingdom and the United States. So this narrative places the beginning and the nucleus of the movement in the West. From the purpose, we can trace first wave in reference to the US while acknowledging the contribution by early feminists all around the globe. Excuse me. So here, originally, it focused on the promotion of equal contract and property rights for women and the position to chattel marriage and ownership of married women and their children by their husband. So these were like the prime concern. So first wave of feminism generally refers to the 19th and early 19th century. So this phase revolved largely around gaining basic legal rights for women that today we cannot imagine reality without. So politics and business were completely dominated by powerful men who didn't consider women capable enough to be a threat. So that was the basic concern during the first wave, because they were not given equal rights, whether it was in property, whether it was in status in a family. So they were not recognized as a threat or as a one who could shoulder the responsibility. So that's why this movement had started to give them equal rights, or just to be recognized as a crucial or as a very important part of the society and of the family. So the men were confined to their households and didn't retain any control there as well. So unmarried women were seen as the property of their fathers, and married women were property of their husband. They didn't have the ability to file for divorce or be granted custody for the children. So this is what I'm discussing here, that ownership of married women was by and the children by their husband. So however, by the end of the 19th century, activism focused primarily on gaining political power, particularly the rights of women's suffrage. So when we talk about suffrage of the women, then marital rape was a concept was unheard of, because it would require treating women as individual with the power to make their own choice. So women who did not work held low positions such as secretary, who did work, obviously, who like got job. They were not like given high profile jobs. They were given jobs like secretaries and worked largely in factories managed and controlled by men. So as they had no rights to vote in election, calling them second class citizen was an understatement. So these are some of the example of suffrage which I'm talking here. So first wave in a way connected with the abolitionist movement in the USA at that time. Both the movements aimed at social reformation and liberation from oppression. So basically the thing was that they were oppressed, they were not recognized, that there was a lot of suffering, the former from the patriarchy and the later from the racial bias, obviously if you talk about the men. An example that reveals that the extent of this link lies within the origin of the first wave itself. So um, yet feminists such as Claire and Margaret Sanger were still active in campaigning for women's sexual, reproductive, and economic rights at this time. So in 1854, Florence Nightingale established female nurses as adjuncts to the military. Before that, they had no rights or they were not even allowed to join military. So in Britain, the suffragettes and possibly more effectively the suffragists campaigned for the women's vote. In 1918, the Representation of the People Act 1918 was passed, granting the vote to women who over the age of 30 who owned houses. That means only women who had houses were allowed to vote. In 1928, this was extended to all women over 21. That means after 1928, all women who were above 21 of years of age were given the rights to vote. So further we can say that in the United States, leaders of this movement included Lucretia Mott, Lucy Stone, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Susan B. Anthony, who each campaigned for the abolition of slavery prior to campaigning women's right to vote. All were strongly influenced by Quaker thought. So American first wave feminism involved a wide range of women. Some, such as Frances Willard, belonged to conservative Christian groups such as the Women's Christian Temperance Union. So others, such as Matilda Jocelyn Gage, were more radical and expressed themselves within the National Women Suffrage Association or individually. So when we talk about this movement, obviously it further goes that the suffrage, the right of women to vote in election, became a goal of the movement with the formation of American Equal Rights Association that was formed way back in 1866. When this organization collapsed, the National Women Suffrage Association was formed in the year 1869. The American Women's Suffrage Association formed later that year. So this is how it came into existence. I mean, there were a different Reformation Society or different organization which tried to uplift the women's or give them some rights. So the solely female-led NWSA had a broad program and wanted to work towards the overall upliftment of women in society on the national stage. So this was it. So American wave feminism is considered to have ended in the passage of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution that was done in 1919, granting women the right to vote in all states. So finally, in a way, they felt they have achieved the target or they have gained the rights. The right was to vote. But the term first wave was coined retrospectively after the term second wave feminism began to be used to describe a newer feminist movement that focused as much on fighting social and cultural equalities as political inequalities. So it wasn't here that the feminist movement had stopped, but obviously it had started gaining momentum. It was moving on to the next phase. And here this phase in a way stopped because finally they got the rights to vote. So that is what was considered to be purpose by some of the feminists. But later they realized that it was not just the purpose to gain the right to vote. They had to move further because there were other equalities which they had to face in the society. So as long as we can say that in 1916 the National Women's Party was formed by young feminist Alice Paul by breaking from NAWSA and aiming to achieve suffrage by working towards a constitutional amendment instead of state amendments. Inspired by British militant suffragists, the party staged demonstration outside the White House and continued their campaign through the World War. So there was like fight for something else. They wanted something bigger than just the right to vote. They wanted equality, which was not given to the females here. So, in the common narrative, we can say that the suffragist movement, the first wave of feminism, ends with this amendment. This in itself shows the selective and exclusive nature of the movement. So, women of color were still practically disenfranchised, and the victory was only for white women. Black women were stopped from exercising their rights to vote through tedious these tactics and facing bodily harm and even arrest. They were brutally beaten up. They were not given any right. They were not even recognized as females. So this was the concern of the black women, and that is why we when we started today's class, we spoke about the mainstream and the alternative feminism. So here, when we talk about the rights of the third world countries and rights of the women of the black women, then obviously the alternative feminism starts here. So that's all for today. Thank you all.